right. Testing 1, 2, 3. We coming through? All right. This is this is officially the first time I've ever done this from my own space here. So I will request your forgiveness for any technical difficulties that we might have. Um, but very excited to turn this into a regular check-in with the community here and talk about some of the cool stuff we've got going. Um, and so I will give everybody kind of like a general breakdown of what's going on right now, and for those that were not in the last AMA, I'll give you a little kind of background on myself first and foremost. Let's get started. So I've been a game developer and director for over 20 years now. I got started with a little company I put together with some buddies called Chair Entertainment, and we did a couple games on the Xbox Live Arcade way back in the early 2000s. And we were using the Unreal Engine to make a lot of these games, and we got the attention of Epic Games, and they liked what we were doing. They said, "Hey, could you make a mobile game with our engine?" We're like, "Let's give it a shot." So we did a little game called Infinity Blade, and it became the best-selling game on the iPhone for the year it came out, and it's got a bunch of sequels. In fact, Epic liked it so much they came and bought our company out, and so. As a matter of fact, my buddy Donald Mustard, who I founded the company with, later went on to be a creative director over at Epic. In fact, was the director of Fortnite, little game some of you might have heard of. At the time, I was talking with Blizzard Entertainment, and was talking with Chris Metzen over there, and they had a brand new game they were working on. The code name was Titan, and it was cool cyberpunk. Adventure, first-person shooter stuff, and very much in sync with the kind of the stuff that I wanted to be doing. So I got on a Blizzard as a member as the senior world developer for Overwatch, what eventually became Overwatch. Love my time at Blizzard. I was there about 6 years. I shifted over into the creative development team where I got to work on all the big Blizzard titles. I was the did story for World of Warcraft, Diablo, StarCraft, Hearthstone, and Heroes of the Storm, if any of you remember that fun little game. Had a great time, though, telling stories and building worlds for some of the most popular games ever. From there, I shifted over to a mobile studio called Scopely. They were just getting started into doing some big titles, and so I was their first creative director and helped them to build and engineer their gaming universe around some big IPs. They were doing the Star Trek game called Fleet Command, had a Looney Tunes game called World of Mayhem that I love. If you're into Looney Tunes cartoons, that game is still rolling, and a couple other really big games. They've got a Marvel Strike Force game, and recently just purchased a little game called Pokemon Go from Niantic, and so they're doing great. I was there for about 2 years and then shifted over to Sledgehammer Games, where I was the creative director for Call of Duty World War II. I got to focus on a lot of fun narrative stuff there. The most fun I had there was working on their Nazi Zombies game, which we played into all sorts of fun Indiana Jones elements with that. So let's see. After that, I spent some time at BioWare. And worked on a couple of projects there as a narrative director. And that's about when the pandemic hit. And so I shifted over into kind of consulting. This is when I became fascinated with Web3 games and the potential that is there to turn games into something so much more than just merely digital entertainment, but something that could also play into your finances as well, as we know. And so I was on with a team called Mythical up in Seattle for a couple of years. Shifted over to Immutable down in Sydney, Australia. I've consulted with the Shiba Inu team and a couple others. And with each of these teams, I really was trying to help them focus on making great games. You know, there's a strong focus on NFTs and selling those NFTs across the Web3 universe, but not as much focus on good games. And there's an art and a science and a magic to making good games. And it wasn't until I came across Vulcan Forge here, I met with Jamie and Ness and the crew here, they're like, this is the perfect situation because this is a team that is hungry and open to make great games, but it's also a community that is willing to put in the thought and the focus and even some of the patience that might be required to make great games. So that brings us to where we are right now. I'm currently meeting with all of our teams. There are several teams that are part of the Vulcan Forge dev group that are working on these separate games. In fact, I met with all of them just today. And my job is try to get them aligned around a design philosophy that will be, put fun at the forefront. And there's a lot of work to be done there. I'm trying to make right now a focus on an element of games called the FTUE, the first time user experience. It's something that means you step into a game, you load up a game, and you feel like you are part of a grander entertainment experience. It's something that I think the Vulcan Forge games could use a little focus on. And so that has been my priority initially. And I've got on with the community. I've got a channel in Discord that's called Cameron's Canyon. You're welcome to come hop in. It's where we talk about all this creative stuff. And this is where I first went to the community and said, folks, if we can be patient, we're not going to be getting a lot of cool end game content while we focus on the FTUE because you can only do one thing at a time. But I promise you, as we get this FTUE polished up and exciting and fun, we will bring so many more people in to play this game. And that's really my focus. My goal is to make these games the kind of game you can brag about to your friends, you can show to your gamer buddies or, relatives or kids and say, like, hop in. I promise you, you'll have a good time. So that's largely been the focus. And that's kind of the summary of kind of where we are and what we're doing. But I'm absolutely open to jumping in on details. And so let's do some questions. Anybody have any burning questions, or do you want me to just keep talking about the my plans with the games here? Seeing a lot of support. How are we all doing? Okay, I'm not seeing any actual questions. So let me I can ramble on about this stuff forever, by the way. I love the idea of having a combined universe. We've got a handful of games, and when I first went through, I first started talking with Jamie. He asked me to give just a general review critique of what was there, and I think the strongest thing that stuck out to me was here you've got all these games with a loose connection to Greco-Roman mythology, but there didn't seem to be a connective tissue, or at least not one that was available to me. A lot of this was because there was no FTUE element there. It was hard to get in and say, who am I as a player and what is my connection to these games? And but also there's this great opportunity. I mean, the very development core of Vulcan Forge is in Greece. You could not ask for a cooler narrative route for a game. This is the studio that absolutely should be at the center of some cool mythology from that time, and it should be woven into everything they do. And so as I went through and played all of these games, I realized that there is a cool and easy to digest story that could exist here. And so I'd love to get your thoughts on this. We're still kind of polishing off the rough edges on this, but the idea is that you as a player, as a member of this community, have been selected by the gods. You have been chosen as a demigod, as one who has divinity in your blood. And the gods want to test you. They want to see if you have what it takes to ascend to Mount Olympus to truly become one of these gods. And so all of the games that you're playing along the way are going to be tests They're going to be ways that you can prove your worthiness, your courage, your tactical thinking, your hardworking skills, and that's how you will gain their approval and acceptance. And each of the gods will have their own tests to give you, and so that is. I know there was already a pre-existing story to the game, but it seemed to me like it was a fairly complex one, and there was a lot of that was kind of hard to access if you had to kind of personally bounce around and find it on YouTube and websites and stuff. And so I'm a big believer that you should be able to describe the character and the motivation for a game in 1 or 2 sentences. So that's kind of what we're going through. All right, looks like we've had some questions coming in. Let's see. Scories, I appreciate all you can ask for is to make it fun. That's what I'm here for. That's what we're going to try for. So Sean says, approximately when can we expect an update to the game that includes your influence? Great question. And I appreciate that because game development takes some time, and we've got teams that are working around the clock, like literally because of where they're placed around the globe. They're probably at every hour of the day, there's a game team working on some Vulcan Forged elements. In this case, we've greenlit my Fatui changes. We've got the teams are already moving on that. I would say we are probably a month out. I like to be conservative about this. It's possible this could come sooner, but we're probably a month out from seeing really the first big elements that are brought through. I'm trying to bring a lot of focus to the Vulcanverse. In my mind, the Vulcanverse is kind of the epicenter. It's the lodestone, if you will, of the franchise. It's where you come in. It's where you create your character. It's where you have more narrative space to see what's happening with that character. So I'm putting a lot of focus right there, although all the other games are going to have some element of fix going through there. But we're going to see a lot of connective tissue happening from all of these games into the Vulcanverse, and we've expressed some of that to you. Okay, so next one. Which game is more fun from the VF games in your opinion? Oh, that's a very personal question. I have a personal, this does not mean this game will get more attention from me, but just so you know, I have always had a thing for tower defense games. I told that to Jamie right when I got started. We've got this great little tower defense thing, but it also means I'm way more critical for what makes a good tower defense game. And I'll be frank, our tower defense game needs a lot of work. It needs to be a little more clear about how it's played. It needs a little more smoothness. And half the time I'm like, am I defending my tower, my home base? Am I defending my Vulcanite? What's the story here? So this has all been put as a priority with one of our teams. It's something that they're working on. The tower defense team has got some really cool stuff coming around. So that's a great question. Okay, Miguel asks, are you talking about a brand new game being done now, or that mindset you were talking about will be implemented in all created games? I'm glad you joined Vulcan, Cameron. Welcome. Oh, thank you so much, Miguel. Yeah, there are a couple ideas for new games that have been discussed, but I'm a big believer in let's get our own house in order before we start talking about new ideas. I think that might have been one of the things that has plagued Vulcan Forge in the past is all these new games and new ideas when really they have the DNA, the core game elements to make what they have very, very good. So that has been my priority, is take what we've got, put our focus into more of a singular area, like the Vulcanverse, for instance, and then we move more surgically across the board. Like I said, tower defense is getting some focus. The Berserker is getting some focus. All of these games, but that focus is going to be similar across all of these, where it's going to be about what is the entry to these games, what is the on-ramp, I guess you can say, to these games. And so that's going to get some focus. We do have ideas for new games, some really cool new games, honestly, but I want to make sure that what we have gets better. It seems like so many of our games are at a 70 to 80%, when with just a little more work could really become awesome. So, okay. Neshwolf asks, in Cameron's Canyon, you've mentioned how the Marvel Cinematic Universe took the Norse mythos and transformed it into something futuristic, stylish, and exciting. That's where we're headed. Oh, you're just helping to answer some of these questions. Thank you, Ness. Appreciate that. Astro Magnus says, Cam, I hear you on Fatui. Do you think new players are going to be discouraged knowing many of us are already near end game level 6 content? Astro, that is a great question. I think, I think back to, World of Warcraft, back when I worked on that. And uh, that was a big question. Do new players have an intimidation factor of, oh, I've got to learn up? And it turns out, if you have a great welcome, if you have a great entry into a game, that's not going to be a big concern. For instance, imagine you are a first-time player. Your friend points you to the welcome to Vulcan Forge. We don't have any way that we're showing analytics of, by the way, most of our players have been here for a couple of years and are already past this. And what makes it even better is if we can really get a surge of new players, they will all be in there together. And so the request I would make of our seasoned, loyal gamer veterans on this team is to keep an eye out for these new players as they start to come in, and to be as welcoming. Let's roll out the red carpet. Let's make this the most exciting, dynamic, engaged community that we can. I think that takes what could potentially be a negative, turns it into a huge positive. So, all right. Okay, so Neswell, if you want me to elaborate on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, okay. Well, so we've worked with Marvel before. In fact, I've had some of the writers from the Marvel team on my teams, both at Blizzard and at Scopely, and they say the biggest problem is that they have decades of comic books that they've got to try and force into a look and a feel for the cinematic universe. I think one thing they did very well in any of the Thor films, and any time that you were in Asgard, is they made it look like their magical abilities and tools and weaponry were just so supremely advanced that it was technology, but it just looked like magic because it was so high end. That's something that I would really like to look at playing into. In Thor: Love and Thunder, they actually go to this the land of the gods, and you actually get to see some of the Greek gods and what they have going there. And I'm like, okay, let's take some note there. I think that right there could at least work as some idea space for us as we're moving through and looking at doing some reimagining of the Vulcan Forge visual aesthetic. That is something that is not my highest priority right now. I want to get that Fatui through first, but I would at some point like to take what is currently a classic mythological aesthetic. Our monsters and our lands and architecture all look like, if you were to get a school book and read through Greco-Roman mythology, is what they look like. I want to kind of turn that dial up a little bit. I want to see if we can't make it look a little more advanced. Like maybe these mythos exist in a real world sort of way, but it's just technology and power that is beyond our recognition. So I know that's a horrible tease, but that's kind of where we're pushing. Okay, let's see. Emon says, with the current gameplay of Vulcanverse, which is all about clicking crystals, landmarks, repeatable dailies, do you think we're going to keep that kind of gameplay and just follow the roadmap? Are we going to transition into an actual MMORPG like WoW or something other like games I work with? Emma, that is 100% what I want to focus on, because I want it to be so much more than that. I mean, we've got this universe. We've got characters we're talking to. We've got the capabilities of making it so much more than a land click and send your Vulcanite out sort of thing. So we're absolutely going to build more into that. I think we're playing with this idea of incorporating some of these other gameplay elements, like if you play Tartarus or Royale, that feel like they should be a part of our universe. They have melee play and much more kind of fast twitch action stuff going in. We're currently looking at trying to implement that into the Vulcanverse overall. So all of a sudden, you really want to spend some time in the Vulcanverse, not just to create your demigod avatar, but there's going to be fighting, and there's going to be adventuring and exploring, and so much more than just grinding for money. So, okay, Roxbury says, "Are you planning to add more Berserk competitions?" Yes. The we first and foremost though we need to do some fixing at that core introductory Fatui level though. So that's the priority. Um, Miguel's glad we're upgrading. We already created a game. Way to go. But glad we're on board with that. Okay, Sean says, I just had an idea to implement tower defense building structures into the Vulcanverse. That will give some meaning to building in Vulcanverse, higher level plots get stronger towers. That's not a bad idea. I can't officially say that we're going to go with that just yet, but I think again this idea of making the Vulcanverse really our hub, you know, rather than just I one thing I worry about is that you pull up the current Vulcanverse installer or sorry Vulcan Forged installer, you just got this array of games and it doesn't put one over the other. And I would really like to have a more directional, guided narrative for you as a player. That's what you would do if this was a AAA game. Um, and I think we're making some strong steps toward doing that. Okay. Midnight Cats Lady, who, by the way, one of the great writers in the community. I hope you've all recognized. If you go over to Cameron's Canyon, she's already suggested some mission type writing. She says documents from Olympians and Asume were shared that have ideas for the community. Will these ideas be taken into consideration as changes are being implemented? Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. The I had not seen those before. I've just recently come across those this week. There is some great stuff there. I do have to give this one caveat though. Um, we love ideas and we love to be a part of that discussion with the community. Why not use all of the neurons in all of our brains to come up with these ideas? But a lot of my job is to prioritize. We obviously can't do all of the jobs at the same time, and so they will be put into our our list of potential directions to go. But I think first and foremost we want to sweep the front porch, polish the gates, make sure everything looks good. So when people come in, we will actually have a crowd of people that are excited and engaged to be a part of what we're doing. So this is Neurodrill's idea and added Creed Towers to VC. Yeah, again, I think the more we can expand your experience in the Vulcanverse and make it so you're doing you hop in there and I could spend all day in here, both on my plot of land, exploring, running missions, and they're all different ways of gaining experience, favor with the gods, and and your coinage. So let's see, Roxbury. Past seasons of Berserk had 1,500 players. Onboarding is fine, but card players need competitions. Do you need to add more front end project managers to engage the player base? All right, that is a little more of kind of a process and production question, and so I'm not sure who's managing that now or what's going to play. My focus is up until now been largely in the creation of the game itself. I know Ness Wolf was on here. Ness, do you want to take a stab at that? But I absolutely believe like the heart and soul of a good card game like Hearthstone is based around the community, is based around that one-on-one competition, and so having tournaments is vital for that. And I want to make sure and it doesn't sound like Berserk has been a very popular game. We're getting some really good analytics from that. I know when I was at Immutable, they had a game called Gods Unchained, and it similar sort of game, very very kind of magic or Hearthstone oriented. And for me, the bigger picture for it's funny. A lot of the instructions that I gave to Gods Unchained are I'm going to give in a general sense to Berserk, which is that we need to make sure that we can differentiate. Why would you play this game instead of Magic? Why would you play this game instead of Hearthstone? Why would you play Berserk instead of Gods Unchained? Um, and I think we've got a lot of very interesting elements of that that we need to. I think we need to do a better job of highlighting what those differences are. I've got some ideas again as far as art is concerned, as far as effects and elements on the gameplay table are concerned. It looks like Nesswolf has a response. Communication is key. There's another tournament planned. The next season will follow. Requires a bit of work yet, as with the break, old team, new team. In this case of pulling the info together and play testing, balancing, etc. We'll see if we can get an update on it then. Thank you, Ness. I asked him. I was like, listen, brother, this is my first AMA, like from giving from myself from my own machine here. So please hop on and give me an assist where possible. By the way, I want to give a shout out to the Vulcan Forge team. There are some very talented, very energized, very excited members to this team that really want to turn this into the best Web3 gaming experience ever, and that is something that I think is right in front of us, and I think will be very possible with this community. You know, I really love how engaged this community is, and how dedicated they are to making it an entire experience rather than just a profitable one. Okay, Scory says a lot of us found Berserk the best game the VF has to offer. I've heard that a lot. I've actually heard that repeatedly, and I think for me that means the challenge is if Berserk is up here, we need to bring the rest of the games up to that level. I would love in another month or two, Scory, for you to be able to say, wow, the rest of the games are just as fun. I think I definitely want to build more interconnectivity between the games so that prizes, rewards, cards that you can pull in Berserk actually can be brought into Vulcanverse. And now, just make up a dumb, sort of thing. This is something that kind of Ness had talked about, is like, if there is a flaming golden spear of Dionysius in Berserk, that card can actually be brought into Vulcanverse and now is something that your character can hold. And so that will push play across the games. And maybe somebody who was like, I'm just not into card games, would be like, damn, I really want that spear. I'm going to go over and play there and see if that doesn't entice me. And you may learn that, you actually love Berserk if you've never played it before. Midnight Cats Lady saying going to a tavern in DC. Yes, that's exactly what I'm thinking. We've got this great game, this great card game that the gods themselves have shown an appreciation for and a love for. So why not have that as an aspect of the game? How awesome would that be? You walk into a tavern in the Vulcanverse and you hear some shouting, some grumbling over there, and like Vulcan himself and Poseidon are getting into a heated match, and they're slamming those cards down, and bursts of fire are coming off the table, and steam, and there's different monsters and demigods gathered around and whispering and about what's going on there. That's just, that is an inherent drama we've already got built into our universe. And I really want to play off that more. That's the sort of thing where you would go into the Vulcanverse just because you heard about that match. You'd want to sit and watch that, right? And then how would that match reflect? Like, let's say Poseidon wins, and now any ocean-based or aquatic cards for the next week have an added boost to them. That's the kind of narrative connectivity I would love to bring in to what we're doing here. Okay, so we see we've got thanks, Ness. Good game ready to take off. Click crystals on your opponents. So, okay, it sounds very much like we are on board with this. Listen, here's the important thing. I want you to know that I am always going to be available on Cameron's Canyon in Discord. If you've got questions, if you've got ideas, I also want to be clear. I might push back on some of this stuff. If we're all going to be designing this together and building this together, that means sometimes ideas will need to kind of wrestle back and forth on what works best. I've already gotten a couple tussles with the team about like, that's a great idea. We've got to get that for Tui first, though. We've got to focus on that. Like just today, we had an interesting discussion about the character creator in Vulcanverse, and I want us to have so many more options. Like right now, you can make like kind of decent looking people with kind of decent clothes, and I was like, listen, if we are demigods, I want to be able to look like that. And we're currently working on some technology right now that will separate the skin on a different map. Not to get too much into the weeds on this, but I want to be able to buy or create glowing molten tattoos that look like they've been forged by Hephaestus himself. I want to be able to have shifting animated, like scales that can come up. Like if you're a demigod, we can absolutely like blow the doors out on what you look like. Imagine looking like you were forged out of iron or gold, and what those upgrades would look. I think that would add a little more cool godliness to what we're doing here. So, all right, looks like we've hit 30 here. So I'm gonna pop out. But again, thank you all for your questions and your thoughts. We're gonna do this every single week. So if something you didn't get to a question this week, make sure to pop in same time, same channel next week. Otherwise, hope you all have a great week.